Welcome. This is the Lifetime Cash Flow Through Real Estate Investing podcast. This is where you'll learn strategies to help you achieve lifetime financial freedom through real estate investment. Your host, Rod Khleif, has owned over 2,000 homes and apartments, and he brings experts in all aspects of real estate investment and management onto the show. Now, here's your host, Rod Khleif.
Welcome to Lifetime Cash Flow Through Real Estate Investing. I'm Rod Khleif, and I'm thrilled you're here. Before we get started, a couple of quick things. If you like what you hear, please subscribe to us on iTunes. That way you'll never miss another show. Also, I want to hear what you think. If you have suggestions for guests, topics, really anything, feel free to email me directly, rod@rodkhleif.com. That's rod at RODKHLEIF.com. I'd love to hear from you. All right, let's get this party started. I know you're going to get tremendous value from the man we're interviewing today. His name's Al Williamson. He's a successful author, real estate blogger, and he's got an interesting set of skills that I think everyone listening to this blog, at least everyone interested in multifamily, should hear. So, Al, without further ado, I'm thrilled you're on the show.
Hey, Rod, I am thrilled to be here. Thank you.
Absolutely. Now, I know you have a book that piqued my interest, and I think I'd like to talk about that today. Just go ahead and get right into it. It's the book is titled 40 Ways to Increase the Net Income of Your Rental Property. And, you know, you've got all sorts of topics in here: how to use your parking lot, turning it into a moneymaker, how to generate cash flow from alternative energy investments, you know, how to improve your net income by utilizing broadcasting opportunities. But we picked a few here that I think I'd like to chat about. The first one being, you mentioned storage. What can a person do to generate more income utilizing storage?
Oh, well, this is surprisingly multifaceted. Let's talk about the space that may not be used in your parking lot that can be accessed by the general public. Let's start with that one.
Okay.
So for there, they have, you can buy prefabricated mini storage units, say 10 by 10, with the same roll-up doors as you would find at a regular mini storage facility. And you can drop that right on your parking lot and bolt it down. And the nationwide average is $1 a square foot. So for every one of those you drop on, you can pretty much think of it as $100 extra a month in return for doing that.
Wow. Any idea what those cost or where someone could get those?
Yeah, you can order those. You can get it's like a duplex. It's a 10 by 20, 2 roll-up doors. It should cost you about $4,000. And you can go cheaper if you assemble it yourself. But they keep it that size because a lot of building departments don't have codes for structures, detached structures, 200 square feet and less. So that's why they keep them in those modules like that.
Do you ever see those put, you know, on extra ground that you have? You know, a lot of units
Absolutely.
have extra ground in the back that's not being utilized.
Absolutely.
I could even see that maybe be even better than a parking lot if you've got some extra land.
Absolutely. Now, here's the key. The key is storage laws. Storage is governed by the lien laws, not landlord-tenant laws. So that's important.
Right.
You have the ability to lock out people if they don't pay. So for that reason, I always recommend that you try to market those storage to people who don't live on your property.
Interesting. Okay, so, as a separate side business rather than because if they pay their rent but they don't pay their storage fee, then you've alienated a tenant. Is that the mindset beyond that, or what's the thought process? Okay,
that's right. They get the landlord and tenant laws all and lien laws all mixed up. And
okay.
If you ever found yourself in court, it would be a confusion as well.
Oh no, that makes complete sense. I've been in eviction court more times than I want to think about, so that makes complete sense. And a lot of the judges in that courtroom, typically you're not going to get your most experienced, knowledgeable judges presiding over eviction cases. So I can really see a hurdle there. So that makes good sense. So use it as a side business. Identify any additional space that you might have, the returns, that's a really good return on a $4,000 investment. $1,200 a month. So, or $1,200 a year rather. That's a good return. Actually, it's more than that because there's two of them. So it'd be $2,400. Wow.
Exactly.
That's a phenomenal return.
Exactly.
Okay, guys, that's a good one, guys. I hope if you've got property. Even a now, I'm sure that there are some zoning restrictions relating to this. Correct? I mean, you couldn't do this at a duplex or something like that. It would have to be more of a commercial zoned property.
Well, here's
multi-zoned.
That's why I said you stay underneath your building permit requirements.
Okay.
Detached buildings are typically not required any building permits. They don't affect your property tax values, and you got to do it tastefully, of course, so that you don't trigger any code enforcement. But it's typically a loophole that you can slide right through.
Now, if you did, several of these, I suppose it might draw attention. Or do you know anybody that's done, 4 or 5 of these double wide storage units on a property, or is it typically somebody throws 1 or 2 in and slides under the radar?
Well, there's 2 answers to that. One is if you put them on skids type of thing, they're considered a temporary structure.
Okay.
So they're way outside the zoning laws. And this is typically how a lot of mini storages expand because they keep utilizing this loophole over and over again. So a lot of mini storages that you see are using these types of structures and expanding the facility and just repeating that loophole. That's a structure.
I wonder, I don't want to get too technical here, but I wonder if there are any zoning restrictions on the fact that you're doing a different business other than multifamily on the property. Have you encountered that?
I haven't. A lot of multifamilies have garages and things already on them. It's very compatible.
Okay. Yeah, okay. All right, fair enough. Well, it sounds like a great idea. The return is fantastic, so it's something I'm personally going to explore. So that's a good one. So storage, and then you mentioned maybe some other fees. You said something about fees in our previous conversation, and can you expand on that a little bit?
Right. There's fees that are punitive. You punish your late fees and things like that. But there's also a way of using fees to customize your offering to your residents, which I like to call your client. There's, of course, most people know about the pet fees, but there's also, as well as dark, where you can dock your boat, where you can park your car. Different privileges can have fees associated with them. One that I particularly like the most, and that I use, is Jeffrey Taylor, Mr. Landlord, made real popular, is the payday rent payment plan, and there's an administrative fee to that, and that basically is you pay half your tenant pays half their rent every 2 weeks, and there's an administrative fee placed onto that.
Oh, okay. So you upcharge it a little bit for letting them pay every 2 weeks, and I suppose that's probably attractive to some people.
But here's the kicker, though, Rod, is you end up, if you pay every 2 weeks, there's two extra payments at the end of every 12 months. So you would definitely have to write the lease that way. Otherwise, obviously, it'd be deceptive. But you could certainly write the lease that way, that you're paying every 2 weeks. I just I sent a letter and amend their lease, and I got about 50% hit rate on that. Wow. Well, that's an extra rent payment every year, every 12 months.
Wow.
For just the cost of a letter and a little bit of planning.
Very interesting. Wow, that's very interesting. Okay, so you mentioned corporate housing as an option. Would it to speak to that a little bit?
Right. So, can I back up a little bit and give you a little history?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So my challenge was in writing, the book as a result, is I was trying to find enough ancillary income or side income or things I could do with my multifamily beyond rent, so that I could cover my mortgage. So it took me 5 years. I was collecting ideas, and a lot of them, they're all in the book. There's more now, though. But I was able to do it. I was able to. My mortgage was $1,650, and I was able to generate, $1,730 of revenue in addition to my rents.
Holy cow!
Yeah. So that's the book. The book gives you a lot of those different strategies that I use. Now, in doing that and looking back and reflecting back, I realized that my corporate housing generated a lot of those additional income streams. For example, housekeeping, I mark up on that. Furnishing the unit, I mark up on that. I rent out bicycles to people, international doctors, so they can get to the local medical center. I charge for that. All of it stems from providing furnished housing in an all-inclusive type of setup offering. And paying all their utilities. I have an administrative fee for that. So corporate housing is really what I think is the highest way of utilizing your rental unit. There's 5 different ways that I've come up with to utilizing your rental unit, and typical landlording is the least profitable thing you can possibly do with your rental.
Huh. Now I'm sure it's probably dictated by the caliber of property that you have, but do you feel like this can work with most rental properties, or does it need to be an A or B class property?
Well, some form of it. So I said corporate typical landlording is the least. If you're in a troubled neighborhood, you can always do some type. I'm being extreme here to a point. You can always do some type of group housing where you rent out just a bunk bed per person. If it's in a really bad, a lot of people on parole can do those types of things.
Oh yeah, no, I actually tried that once in Tampa with some of my houses, and I connected with a halfway house and was renting by the room. I failed at it, but I think there are people that are successful with it. So
yes,
that's very interesting. Yeah, we had to furnish it, and then they paid by the bed.
And now that works. That works for veterans as well. It's popular for veterans and veteran services, as well as single moms. You can get them to rent by the room. So that they have some type of support system. There's all kinds of flavors of this, but one thing's in common is all the furnishing is provided.
Right. Yeah. That's obviously guys, if you're going to try this, realize that you're going to have the expense of furnishing the units. But
right.
But it's a very interesting strategy. Do you utilize Airbnb as well?
Yeah. So Airbnb is another way. I call that short stay housing. It's another type of way of utilizing your rental unit, and corporate. It's not as profitable as corporate housing because.
How long does corporate housing typically last? I assume it's the longevity that makes it more lucrative.
Yeah, the longevity, and also here's the crux of the matter: is when people are when they're doing Airbnb, they're typically paying out of their own pocket for whatever it is. Corporate housing, an employer pays or someone's being reimbursed for it. Can you follow me?
Right. So it's not as painful. It's not as personal.
Well, it's a different mindset altogether. The corporate housing is, if you're renting to someone in the government, for example, then you have the Government Service Administration, GSA guidelines and rates that you can follow. You can go all the way up to that point, to that allowance, and everything's fine. It doesn't make you, the person who's staying there doesn't care because they're not paying for it. So they'll give you the top dollar amount.
Sure. Very interesting.
Comfortable. Now, Airbnb, which, I wrote a whole, I've been doing Airbnb since 2011. I started in San Francisco when I was working there as a guest, and I started experimenting with it. It's absolutely wonderful, except typically it's not a business traveler all the time. It's more of a tourist. These people that come take up more of your time. They have more of a tourist mindset, and also they're more thrifty, I should say. Because
they're more thrifty, and they're probably a little more demanding as well.
Right. That's why. Yeah. That's why, even though I love Airbnb and I provide it in one of my experimental rental units, I favor corporate housing because it's a different mindset, because it's a different pot of money that people are working with.
Sure. Very interesting.
Yeah. Very
interesting. So, how would a person? So they'd furnish the unit. Where would someone market for corporate housing?
So right now, Airbnb and vacation rental by owner are starting to focus on business travelers, and I call business travelers anyone who's like myself, an engineer who's traveling out of town to work on a bridge, or anyone traveling for business. Even I have international students that have their universities are paying for them for housing. They're getting reimbursed. So anyone who's getting reimbursed, I kind of drop into this corporate housing box.
Okay.
And you can advertise through Airbnb and TripAdvisor, HomeAway. There's a number of platforms. I have my own website as well, so I can go after keywords that people are looking at for the medical center, which I focus on. And,
okay.
Yeah.
And I suppose you look at where you're located. Right. If you're near a hospital, if you're near a large corporation that might be bringing people in, you could certainly let them know it's available.
Right. Even a trade school. It's a lot
schools.
Of,
yes.
Yes. So the better you network, the better you can do. If you're willing to get out of your house, if you're willing to pick up the phone and go meet somebody, and you're going to do quite well. And it's all relationship building, Raj.
Sure. Sure it is.
Basically all it is. Most people want to be unfortunate. Well, I definitely understand it. A lot of landlords just kind of want to be passive. And because of that, they're only making I'm saying, only half, the very best, only 50% of what they could be making on a net income point of view.
That's very interesting. So, I know out of all the strategies that you have, because I'm sitting here thinking about the logistics involved myself. Which one do you think is requires the least effort for the gain, for the benefit? Which one of your strategies do you like the best?
Oh, I like. That's a hard one. If you're asking me which one's the least, the absolute least thing you can do is the payday rent plan, which we're talking about. That's because that's just sending a letter, a postage stamp, and amending your existing lease agreement.
Do you have an example of a letter that you might be able to give me that I could conclude with the show notes as an example?
I do. I got it from a friend who sells a course that includes all these things. So I'll have to include his link with it, though.
Fair enough. I think my listeners might like to see that. I mean, it's kind of commonsensical, but if there's some sales language in there, that might be helpful to my listeners. So so we'll include that. I'll make sure and get that from you, Alan. I appreciate that very much, and we'll of course include the link for your friend that created it. Now, you also mentioned Wi-Fi. I know. Can't imagine that people don't have Wi-Fi anymore. But what are your strategies around it?
Well, Wi-Fi touches on a bigger principle that a lot, especially in multifamilies, every tenant or every unit is kind of working in its own little silo. They don't share any of their signals. They don't share their cable services. They don't share their, they have their own internet oftentimes. So as a landlord who receives a check from everyone anyway, there's an opportunity to lower people's expenses, lower your tenants' expenses by helping them share. They can not only share Wi-Fi or wireless signal, and of course you mark up a little bit on their rent, and you make more money. They would see more savings.
So that I'm understanding you would as a landlord, you'd approach your tenants. You'd say, hey, I know you guys are individually paying for internet. If you'd like, I can coordinate where some of you share signals. It'll save you money, and then they can certainly afford to pay a little more rent. Is that the strategy?
That's exactly it. Now, what's important about that is it's better to group 2 or 3 people together instead of trying to do the whole building.
Okay.
Because
the signal loss and all that business.
The signal loss. Also, the same thing with cable TV. You can make that into a wireless signal, and if you have, say, a lot of, especially seniors who consume a lot of TV, there's big savings to be had there by just buying the receivers and transmitters and helping them share. Of course, that's more with satellite TV than cable.
I see.
But those things are changing. Those things are changing fast as things move more towards the internet.
Sure.
But let me leave you with. I want to throw this out. Wi-Fi is the current technology, but that's not the next. That's not the technology is going to be changing again.
Sure.
And when it changes again, it's a time for landlords should be the first to embrace the change and offer the new upgraded services. That's your entry point. Every inflection on the technology curve is an opportunity for a landlord to come in and give their tenant something that they couldn't afford at a reasonable price, and make money for themselves at the same time.
Oh, that's a great last tip there. Well, Al, I really appreciate your time. We're going to put a link to your website in the show notes, and and mention and re-mention your book. And I'm very grateful for having you on the show today.
Oh, it's great talking to you.
All right, you take care. We'll talk again.
Okay.
All right, thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the Lifetime Cash Flow Through Real Estate Investing podcast. If you've enjoyed the show, please subscribe and then take a moment to visit iTunes and leave a 5-star rating and review. For more resources to connect with us further, please visit our website at lifetimecashflowpodcast.com. Tune in next week for our next show.